But my son or daughter, am I not going to protect? And for that matter, I want to protect your son and daughter, and this one, and Moshe's son and daughter, and Chani's son and daughter, and everybody's son and daughter, because that is my job as an activist. That is my job as an asken within the Jewish community. Yes, there are times, my dear friends, when you have to act first and think second. And in essence, that's how we got into doing deprogramming. We would talk to these kids, we saw it went nowhere. And we realized, hey, we better do something a little bit more drastic. Let's grab the kid off the street, kidnap the kid off the street, lock him in a safe house, and then see what happens.
L'chaim, and welcome to a very special episode of Inspiration for the Nation. I sat down with Rabbi Shea Hecht, who didn't ask to be a Jewish cultbuster, but through a few events, he became one for many years, and he dealt with helping Jewish people get deprogrammed from being brainwashed from the cults that you're thinking of. Yes, in your head, you think of maybe the Moonies, the Hare Krishnas, the Scientologists, and many more. He got to help people get out of it. Sometimes he was successful, sometimes not, but the details are scary, and it's incredible the work that he did and does. And I just need to add in, Rabbi Shea Hecht is a member of a distinguished family of fourth-generation American Jews, rabbis, and scholars. He is one of the 12 children of eminent Rabbi Jacob J and Rebbetzin Chave Hecht, and formerly a deprogrammer. Rabbi Shea has broadened his focus to directing the multifaceted Jewish educational organization, NCFJE, and is currently a life strategist and a family counselor specializing in crisis counseling. This conversation is a lot about cults and deprogramming the people that he saved. And in this episode, you'll also hear about why Yaakov Linger is looking so good. If I could say so myself, it's nothing to do with me. It happens to be with Twillery, the incredible clothing brand that is really stepping up my game, and they can step up your game too. You're also going to learn about the Daily Aliyah, the book that you've heard me talk about, and how it's going to transform your year going through each parsha at a time. You're going to also hear about Dimensions in Chumash, which I started and is brilliant. And you're also going to learn about how you potentially can win a free apartment in Jerusalem. Okay, now here's what you came for, all the cult stuff and how to stop them. Rabbi Shea Hecht. I'm Yaakov Linger, and you're listening to Inspiration for the Nation. Okay, Rabbi Shea Hecht, I'm a little overwhelmed to have you here because there's just so much to talk to you about. So thanks for coming in, and we're going to talk about a lot about your life, probably focusing on one particular area that you didn't really ask to get involved in.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm honored to be here today. As one of my children told me yesterday, now you're really getting into the big world.
Oh, gosh.
Inspiration for the Nation is definitely a place to go and to be. In my first book, The Confessions of a Jewish Cultbuster, I talk about I got the job that I really didn't want. The name of the chapter, the job I never asked for. I was studying in yeshiva, and as good yeshiva bachrim, not only you want to steig, not only you want to be successful in your learning, but you want to do something and feel relevant in something. My brother at that time was working on different campuses in New York City. This goes back to 1972, where the Christians decided that they created a program called Key 73, that in that year they were going to convert, Rahman al-Islam, the entire world. And there was a tremendous campaign right here in New York called the I Found It campaign, which, by the way, the Jews then created a campaign, We Never Lost It. They said, I found it. We said, we never lost it. We had God all the time. It was then that I found myself on campus after campus, standing against someone representing various different forms of Jews for other religions. And I liked sort of the challenge. I was always a little bit competitive in school, and I liked a good argument. And it brought me into something that later became a full-time profession for over 10 years of my life. Today, I have a very good understanding of what we refer to as mind control, brainwashing. Because when you talk to a person, can anyone be brainwashed? Oh, what do we have to do to brainwash you? Do we got to lock you into a room? Do we got to program you? So all these terminologies are really, to the layman, they're really not clear. They're not really understandable. And if you have interest in it, of course, we will talk about some of these things.
Such interest. I couldn't. I literally the Jewish Cultbuster book. I couldn't put it down. Like I fall asleep reading books on Friday night, and that book I don't know. I stayed up till like 3 a.m. until I'm like, okay, I have to go daven tomorrow. I can't continue reading it right now. It's sadly fascinating.
Yes, I think you really capture it. Sadly fascinating. A 10-year period of my life where part of my strategy was, okay, how are we going to get this kid who's selling flowers on the street? How are we going to drive by, chop him, literally kidnap him into your car, drive off to a safe house? And then what are you going to do with him once you get to that safe house? And the process, the average deprogramming, by the way, only took us 4 days. 4 days.
For someone who didn't read your book, what's deprogramming?
We'll get to that in a moment.
Sure.
But let's first talk about the work that leads up to the program. Mm-hmm. Parents come to me, say, hey, Hecht, we need to hire you. When I say the word hire you, I don't mean the money exchange, because I and all the people that I worked with, were volunteers. Wow. There were a lot of expenses, and sometimes many expenses. Sometimes we'd have to take a plane ride. Sometimes we'd have to rent the cars or trucks or various things, because if you had a setup for what we call the chap, the grab of this student, of this young person, you had to create a decoy. What happens if the police are coming? The last thing you wanted to do is be picked up when you have the young man or the young lady from the cult. Now, in our conversation, I'm going to call them kids, but we're not talking about little kids. We're talking about somewhere between the age of 18 and 25. That was the bulk of the young people that we spoke to, both men and women, about the same amount in both cases. Parents came to us, said, okay, Hecht, our son is in the Moonies. Our son is in the Hare Krishnas. Our son is in the Divine Light Mission. Our son is in this particular church. How can you get them out? And we would strategize. If the son or daughter was ready to talk to us, we started conversation. Even if we knew that the conversation is not going to go anywhere and we're going to have to grab this kid off the street, we still started a conversation because we wanted to make sure. The first thing, the question, as I tell parents, is, I'm not a doctor. I need to know that your child is normal. If your child joined the cult because simply they were not able to cope with life, they needed to go to a place to hide out. They needed a place where they needed someone to make the decisions for them. So that's a very, very different situation. So parents come to us, say, hey, my kid's involved in a cult. We'll soon talk about how they got in. We'll soon talk about how they're going to get out. The first thing is, I can't reach him. We said, great. Where is your child? We sent out a team of people to try to follow that particular person. We then set up a grab, which we refer to as the chap, the kidnap. We then kidnap that person. Now, again, if we want to talk about the legalities, was it legal? One of the questions I usually get, is it legal? I said, well, it depends who you ask. If you ask me, parents are going to reclaim their child, number one. Number two is, as far as I'm concerned, what the cult did was not legal. When they brainwashed, we're not talking about a church. We're not talking about a religion that opens up their signs and say, come and join us for services on Friday or on Sunday or on Saturday, as some of the churches today will do. No, they basically lured you in. They fooled you in. They really conned you in to get into that group. And of course, the big question is, can we all be conned? Well, Madoff says everybody can be conned, and Shea Hecht says for a cult, everybody can be conned. Yes, if I was in the wrong place in the wrong time, they could have chopped me in. And I see that people who are strong personalities, the smartest people. Ted Patrick wrote the foreword for my book. On my first edition, he was a well-known name. I put him on the outside cover. Now he's still in there, but I didn't want to take it away. But it's not on the outside cover. Ted Patrick said to me when I wrote the book, he says, Rabbi, he spoke very slow with a southern accent. He says, Rabbi, you make it sound that it's the foolish children that are getting caught up. No, Rabbi, the smartest kids in America, my number one customer was Jewish families. They are the smartest by far. And the second he said, well, the Catholics, as it happens. So he says, these are the smartest kids. So recently, I'm speaking to a father who the son potentially is involved in a cult. And the father says to me, listen, Rabbi Hecht, I'm a businessman. I'm very smart. I say, you got it wrong. If you think it has to do with smarts, you got it wrong. That's not what brainwashing is about.
So how does the smartest people get brainwashed?
Oh, so I say like this. It's not weak people, but it's people when they go through weakness. There was a little booklet printed many, many years ago, about 35 years ago, how to create a cult. Believe it. In America, you can do everything. You go online, you can how to make a bomb. Come on, guys. No, you can find a video of how to make a bomb. So there's this little booklet, how to create a cult. Where do you go to find your cult members? When is the best time? And they found out towards the end of college, the 4th year of college, right before graduation, young men and women are thinking to themselves, where am I going? All of a sudden, life has a different perspective. Mommy and daddy were taking care of everything. They were paying the bills. I was going to college. They were paying $50,000 for my tuition. They were paying for my housing. They gave me a car. I had everything. And found the telephone calls now sound like this. Listen, Marty, I want to tell you right now. Listen, Susan, you're not coming home. You got that degree. You better find a job. I didn't send you for 7 years to college for nothing. You're not coming home. I'm telling you right now. Mom and I made a decision. You're not going. Now the young man or the young lady says, I got to make a decision. They get invited for a weekend to one of these cults, a retreat for one of these cults. And they go to retreat, hook, line, and sinker, they're sold.
What's so appealing in terms, like, what are they saying to them that they're like, this is my answer?
There's a part to every human being that I will submit myself to a higher power. And that, by the way, the Yontif of Rosh Hashanah, what do we want on the day of Rosh Hashanah? It's not so much tshuva. Tshuva is Yom Kippur. Tshuva, charota, Kabbalah ala Osid, that has to do with Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur, we make our resolutions for the year. Rosh Hashanah, it's Tamlichuni Aleichem. God, become my king. Become my master. Let me be your servant. Let me be your slave. Avinu Malkeinu, you'll be the father. I'll be the child. You be the king. I will be the follower. And so there's a part to every human being, which is a good thing, that we want to follow a leader, that we want to submit ourselves to a leader. So the first thing is understand that this is the way we created to begin with a certain drive in that way. So that's why when somebody says, oh, I can't understand how the guy just gave himself away to somebody. No, relax. That is a gene that's put into every human being. The question, of course, is how then, why did I give it to this particular person? How did I, and many of the quotes, young men and women who never had an interest in religion, all of a sudden are going to these religions, and they're able to stand on the street for 12 hours a day and sell flowers, not going to the bathroom, if I may, not giving into any of their worldly needs and pleasures at all, and just we're doing this for Father, we're doing this for the Guru, we're doing this for our leader. So the first thing is there's a gene in every human being that we're ready to serve our master. Second thing is the design of these places and the design of these retreats have a lot to do with the emotional. Different than Scientology. By the way, Scientology has a different game completely. But most of the cults, the Moonies, for instance, they were most successful in their camp out in California. They were inviting people. Once they saw they were by the airports, and in those, I remember going back to the 60s and 70s, so we're talking about most kids traveled by buses. Okay, they hung around the bus terminals, and when they saw, hey, you look like you don't have where to sleep tonight. Hey, I come over to you. Young man, what's your name? Oh, Yaakov, do you have a place where to sleep tonight? Would you like to come back to my place? Oh, what is your place? Well, there's a few young people living together. You come back to my place. We feed you. We have a few games. We put you to bed. Next day, say, oh, there's a bus going up to the retreat just for the weekend. Would you like to go? Most of these people, again, I just finished college. I'm happy to do a little bit of traveling. Yeah, I might as well hang around the retreat. When you get to the retreat, you find out that you're stuck there because the bus is not coming back. It's not only for a weekend. The bus is not coming back for another 2 weeks. And then there's doctrination of how we can actually, what I use the term as brainwash you. And it's done systematically. And everyone can be brainwashed. I say it about myself. I say it about my children. Of course, that's why one of the reasons is you need a Rav, you need a teacher, you need a friend. You need to make sure that you don't get sucked into something and make decisions on your own. Again, we see this in the financial world where how many people invest and then their wife tells them, their husband tells them, listen, I think you're investing too much money in this guy. Madoff, it doesn't sound right to me. Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm making so much money. And likewise, when you think about that, with spiritual investment, emotional investment, intellectual investment, yes, you start getting in, you get a little greedy. I'm going to make profit. It doesn't mean, again, money profit. I'm going to make profit. I'm doing well. And this is why I'm going to follow in this area. Again, one thing about every cult leader, they're geniuses and surrounded by geniuses. They're excellent at manipulation. They'll play one against the other, one group against the other. The Moonies, one of the things, indoctrination, what they used to do is you used to play a game what we call dodgeball or machanayim, some of the camps call it. Okay? You're playing the game. When they play the game, they would chant, bomb him with love, bomb him with love. That basically what was happening to the young man or young woman playing that game. You're getting completely sucked into the game. You're getting sucked in to the competition, and you're getting sucked into the concept of, around here, it's all about love. Bomb them with love. Even when we're strong, even when we abuse you, even when we scream at you, even when we deprive you of things that you need, like food and shelter and clothing, etc., and a good bed to sleep, it's all done out of love. Hey, I'm in a place where so many people love me, so many people care about me. And that's the next thing that is done between the people themselves. This must be a great place because there's so much love here. Yes, there is a lot of love. No, but that doesn't make it a holy place at all. That doesn't make it a spiritual place at all. You got to find out who are the leaders behind it, what are some of the groups, what are they doing, and what's their intention.
It's fascinating. So when you're picking these kids up, what's their first reaction? I'd imagine they're like, get me out of here.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, first of all, I great question.
Thank you.
It is. When you hop the kid, what does he think you're there for? In my second book, I write about a young man who was unfortunately abused in a particular area by a guy in the yeshiva world in a very religious community. We were successful in locking the guy up. But the guy always talks, he says, when I was grabbed and kidnapped originally, what was going through my mind? But most times, or I should say, many of the cults, when you grab the subject, they know what they're being grabbed in, because some of the cults were actually, at a certain point in time, there were many, many deprogrammers around the country. And therefore, they were forewarned, hey, if you get grabbed, this is what you should do. And one of the things that we were told is, play along until you have an opportunity. So we knew that. So the answer would be is, they don't know why they were called or grabbed, or they do know why they were grabbed, and they know it has to do with the religion, or being tested. Most times, and when I say most times, we dealt with many, many cases, many, many grabs. I have to understand, in that 10-year period, we were dealing with hundreds of families. It doesn't mean that we grabbed every kid. We only grabbed if that was the right way. People sometimes talk to me and think, or even who help me, Shea, you're a little trigger happy. No. we thought it through very, very carefully. We did our homework. We did our homework with the family. We did our homework with about as far as a student. We wanted to know if there was any, for instance, medical records. Should we have to know, is there any history of mental illness? Because if yes, I'm not a doctor. I'm not able to deal with that. We only chapped healthy kids from good families. Or so, when we say good families, it doesn't mean that it wasn't a dysfunctioning family, but a family that had love, a family that had caring, a family that wasn't the question that we were doing it for the wrong reasons. We put ourselves as an agent of the father or mother. And if the father or mother didn't do this out of love, he wasn't my client, if I can use that terminology. So what went through their mind? In most cases, they knew what was happening. And what they then said is, I'm going to die for my cause. I'm going to have Mesiras Nefesh. And one of the things what they sometimes would do is they would go into a silent mode. They wouldn't talk. We had a young lady from the Moonies. She did drive us crazy. She was quiet for 26 hours, did not say one word. Now you say, how did I break the silence? Broke the silence is we were in Crown Heights. Then there was a black Lubavitcher Chassid, black Jew. And I told him, you're going to go into the room. Don't say one word. Tell him you see your yarmulke and your tzitzis and your beard. Come in and sit down. And he came in. He sat down right facing the young lady. And she's looking and she's looking. And I'm watching. I said, her silence is over. And finally, she blurts out, are you Jewish? He says, of course I'm Jewish. Why would I be wearing a yarmulke and tzitzis if I weren't Jewish? So one of the things is they went into silent mode.
Well, hold on. Why? I was so confused. Why did you think that would get her to talk? The curiosity?
First of all, yes. Yeah, curiosity. Number one. But we tried everything else. It didn't work. I had this guy on my team. Right. I figured it'll work. Yes. It was curiosity. I knew she would have to talk to this guy and she would be open. Plus, we knew that when she joined the Moonies' other name was Unification Church. What she was sold on is, we're going to unify the world. We're going to bring unity. The Jews are not doing it. The Christians are not doing it. The Muslims are not doing it. The Hindus are not doing it. We could do it. Reverend Moon and under his umbrella, we're going to bring unity to the world. Okay. We have unity. Now, the Hasidic Jews or the religious Jews that are hanging around, you don't like them. Okay, they're bad. But what about the black guy? Okay. All of a sudden, she started speaking. And by the way, we had tremendous success with this young lady. Yes, she was somewhat of a challenge, but later went on to study Torah and became a religious young lady and really embraced Yiddishkeit in a very, very deep way and a very beautiful way. So your question, what's going through their mind? Most of the times, particularly for cult members, they know what they grabbed. They also know, in most cases, that my parents are behind it. Now, sometimes we hid that from them because if they, in fact, when they left to school and then got up in the cult, they didn't have a good relationship with their family. They would, is my parents behind it? No. Well, who's behind it? Jews who love you. Jews who care for you. Very different than all the other deprogrammers, I always had a very, very big team. And within the first 2 hours that we had the young man or young woman in the safe house, I brought in 20 people. Now, guys like Ted Patrick, Galen Kelly, there were many women and men that did deprogramming. They always worked with a very small team, 2, 3 people. I said no. Very, very early on, the young man or the young lady is going to see, my stamina is not going to stand out. I won't be able to, 20 people? Come on, give me a break. But I also use it in another way. Because I said to them, they said, why am I here? I said, because you see those 20 people that you saw in the last 2 hours? They all care about you. Every one of them are volunteers. Every one of them are here because they care about you. They have better things to do with themselves. Most cases, of course, it was college students, yeshiva students that gave of their time when we were totally active within the deprogrammings.
Wow. We'll be right back to this week's episode. But first, let me tell you how looking your best is one thing. Feeling your best is a whole nother level. I've had the privilege of talking about my favorite clothing company. Yep, you could quote me on that. My favorite clothing company, Twillory. On Twillory.com, you can find the best pants in the world. By the way, for those asking, because I'm getting a lot of them, they have different sizes of the pants and which ones are the most fitted, which ones aren't. There's a little button on by every pants page where you could find it, and it gives a breakdown of the sizes. So if you want super tight, they have that. If you want a little relaxed fit, they have that too. I am currently wearing their undershirt. I'm holding it. It kind of looks like a regular undershirt, but it feels like nothing you've worn before. It feels like I'm like wearing like smooth silk on me. It is amazing. I'm also rocking their half zip sweater right now. And you're thinking, hey, this is great, but I want a discount. Come on, why did I come here for? Well, you're in luck. With code word INSPIRE, cheesy, I know. With code word INSPIRE and Twillory.com for a limited time, if you go on the website and you spend over $139, which buy a few pairs of pants and boom, you're already there. Maybe even like 2 pairs of pants. Boom, you're there. These pants will last you, I don't want to say a lifetime, but my pants have lasted me over 5 years at this point. And you'll get $18 off when you spend $139. And when you're a new customer, and people ask me all the time, because I guess I'm like their unofficial spokesman, what if the size, the fit, everything fits differently. The shirts, the pants, they have different sizes. Order up, order down. They have incredible shipping, free shipping, basically, returns. And go ahead and check them out. Buy them with code word INSPIRE, Twillory.com. Now back to my conversation with Rabbi Shea. Can you take me through, we spoke about Moonies a little. Can you tell me about the other kind of cults and like the run-ins that you had with them, or how they, I guess the stories from these kids of like how they were affected by it?
Yeah.
And I have a list, the list of the chapters going through like their stories. I could read through that if you prefer, but.
Whatever, it's your show. You got the mic.
I'll read off a few of them and you'll tell me which ones you want to talk about. I feel like we did the Moonies, but Hank and Hebrew Christians, Jewish Ronnie and Hare Krishnas, Joel and the Seventh-day Adventists.
Let's talk about Hank and the
Hebrew Christians.
Sure. Because I think it's really a great story, because that took place very local. They were they were in Long Island. That was a Long Island cult.
When I was reading, I'm like, I live in Long Island.
That's right. It was a Long Island cult, and they were very, very successful. They were also very devious. For instance, when they would go around and proselytize, they realized that if they came and told the people that they were goyim, Jews are not going to listen to them. Oh, I'm a Christian. Well, Jew says, I don't have nothing to do with Christian. I'm not going to listen to you talk about religion. Oh, I'm a Hindu. No. Therefore, what they basically did is they taught all their people to walk around and say, I'm Jewish. Hi, I'm Jewish. Oh, you're Jewish. Hey, do you believe in Oysa Ya'ish? Do you believe in the Savior, etc.? And that's how they got into congregation. I just want to shift a little bit. This is where for instance, in Manhattan, in north of Manhattan, I'm having a singing moment near Yeshiva University, in that neighborhood, there was a church there that was reaching out to Russian families. And they were saying to them, listen, you're Russian Jews. We're Jewish. This is the Judaism that your parents went away from. And sort of bringing them back to now something completely different, but fooling them and lying to them. The number one aspect of every cult is lies. They say that the end justifies the means, and therefore lying. So if you have a rabbi that's lying to you, we're dealing sometimes with Jewish cults, once the lies start flying, you know there's something wrong. There is something wrong. If your rabbi is telling you to lie to your parents, to your family, to your friends, to your former friends, know that there's something wrong. Lying is a problem, number one. So in this case, Abba Hickman, that was he called himself Abba, father, and he had a lot of followers. Most of the followers were non-Jews, but they all walked around. Some of them wore yarmulkes, tzitzis. The women dressed tznius, they dressed with modesty, and they approached the person. The first thing they said, yes, I'm Jewish. So the people on my team, when we were infiltrating them and following them and really bothering them, they would go to a place, if they would advertise for a place, again, we're going back now to the end of 1970s, 78, 79, 80, they would do a shindig in Hewlett, and they would say, hey, we're going to invite people. We had a whole group of people that would come.
Did they know that you were you? Or they're like, oh, they're buying this from us?
Well, some of us, they saw more than once, and they knew exactly who we were. But they couldn't shut us out because it was an open ticket. Some of us, they didn't know. But when they would say they're Jewish, we trained all our people. The first thing is your mother Jewish? Oh, interesting. What is your mother's Hebrew name? So they realize, oh, well, my mother's not really Jewish, but I'm Jewish. Oh, my mother's Hebrew name? I don't know my mother's Hebrew name. You mean you're Jewish and your mother's Jewish and you don't know your mother's Hebrew name? And it would make them feel very uncomfortable. And sometimes that would end the conversation. They realized right away, I'm not going to convince this Jew to come back to our church.
So tell me about Hank.
So Hank within itself was a kid who for a little while actually went to yeshiva. And one of the stories he tells, he says, I remember being a little child. I was going to, he lived in Long Island, actually. I was going to yeshiva, and my Rebbe, or my Mora, taught me about wearing tzitzis. And I came home and I told my father, I have to wear tzitzis. He says, no, we don't wear tzitzis in this house. You're not. It's true. You're going to Jewish school. And by the way, if you're going to continue coming home with all these things, we're switching you to public school next year, which they eventually did. And he said to me one day, he says, Shea, if I would have cried for that pair of tzitzis, maybe the fullest way, maybe I would have become religious then and would have brought my parents closer to religion. But instead, he unfortunately they transferred him to public school. He had a desire. Most of these young men and women, what I found was they did have a desire to serve God. So it wasn't that it wasn't in what we call a vacuum. Oh, I was just having my pleasant day on the way to the beach, on the way to the movies, and someone came and said, hey, get involved in religion. No, I wanted something more. I needed something more. A young lady who told me that when she joined the Unification Church, she said, I looked for a religion that was going to encompass all. And a name like Unification Church, I thought, this is the place. This is a place that's going to make unity. And I realized how she was fooled and lied to. And the next thing is, as we said, lying is synonymous with any good cult or any good outreach religion that is trying to sell something that they don't have. They will also put forward certain things. Oh, in this group, we help the needy. We help the elderly. I would say to them, okay, can you tell me what programs you did? Oh, well, a month ago, that's not called a program that you're helping the elderly. You know, every yeshiva or every Hebrew day school has chesed programs, but you're not a chesed organization. There's a big difference between a chesed organization and a chesed program or doing chesed within your school or within your yeshiva, within your Hebrew day school. So Hank, yeah, it was interesting. The interesting thing what Hank himself, what ended up bringing him back is when he realized that his I don't know what to call him, his priest, because that's basically what he was, although he called himself the rabbi, the priest was really lying about some of Torah's teachings, and he realized that you have to buy the book to get
yeah, that's fine. That's fine. We're not giving everything away. Don't worry.
We in truth, he ended up finding out, reading things from the Chabad, and he realized that the Rebbe's talks, that his pastor was getting the talks from a guy in between. I know the guy who was giving it to him.
Wow.
He didn't realize. He says, he never told him what he does. And he says, I know the Rebbe has these talks. Can you do me a favor when the talks come out? Because everything what the Rebbe was then speaking was translated and transcribed, etc. He was getting those things, and he was teaching it as new innovations from his church. And that's why, and when he came to spend a Shabbat in our home, we have a lot of stories about that guy, side stories, the time that he spent in our home. Very, very interesting. For instance, one of the things, the first Shabbos he came to us, he didn't realize that after gefilte fish, you have soup and meat. So he ate some fish and salads. My wife said to him, would you like another piece of fish? He said, yes. He was still hungry. Yeah, another piece of fish. And then all of a sudden, they bring out the chicken soup. Okay, you can eat the chicken soup. And then all of a sudden, they're bringing out the chicken and kugel and vegetables. And he said, oh, I must tell you the truth. I thought it was only fish was the entire meal, so I ate so much. I don't have much room. In those days, the family was a little bit larger, and my wife baked challah every single Shabbos. So the homemade challah, that just from the smell alone, but you can, homemade challah, somehow you can eat double the amount of regular challah,
That's true. Okay, so I'm going to read a few others, and you tell me. Joel and Seventh-day Adventists, Eddie and the Church of Bible Understanding, Barry and the Divine Light Mission, the Cult of Cults, Jake and the Scientologists. Give us some juice from some of these. And again, it's in the book, buy the book, but give us some.
Yeah, I want to go about to Joel. Joel and Seventh-day Adventists was really actually a fascinating story, because Joel was actually perhaps the only kid that we dealt with, or I should say, of the young men and women that we dealt with, that went to yeshiva all his life. So he graduated the 12th grade of what I call a kosher yeshiva. We're not talking about a yeshiva that I wouldn't send my child to. It was a kosher yeshiva. And he graduated 12th grade. He then went on life to do other things, and he came across the Seventh-day Adventists. And Seventh-day Adventists basically started asking him questions that he didn't have answers to. And he said to himself, if I, who went 12 years to yeshiva, don't have answers, then something was wrong with my education. And therefore, they may have something to teach me. When I sat with him, because he said he had a Jewish pastor that came along with it, that was a separate whole interesting story that took place. When I said to him, Joe, a yeshiva doesn't teach you the entire Torah. A yeshiva teaches you how to learn Torah, how to get the information you need, how to learn Chumash properly. You need to learn it with Rashi. How to learn a piece of Gemara. You need to learn it with Rashi or other Mefarshim, or to have an understanding. When you learn Agadata, the stories of the Talmud, where we then go most according to Rabbi Shea, follow his interpretations and understanding. And when he realized that, right, there's no way that in 12 years of schooling, and particularly some of those years I was 6 years old, 7 years old, 8 years old, how much was I able to absorb? But even in 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade, I did have secular studies. So how many hours did I have? Was I able to study the entire Torah and know everything? Of course not. All I learned in yeshiva was a pattern and a format of how I can then study on my own. And by the way, just as a side thing, not so much to the book, we live in the greatest times today. And I tell this always to people. It's very simple. There's no excuses why we cannot study Torah. There are today so many great books out there, and books that tell you how to read the other books, the aid to the Talmud, how to get around the Talmud. Other books that really simply teach us how to learn. There's videos, there's tapes, Taste of Torah. There are so many things out there, programs out where you're listening and watching right now. You can really, first of all, on one hand, you have no excuse. There's no excuses. You have to study Torah.
Right.
But in your car, in whatever you're doing, you can't fall asleep at night? Good. Put on a nice Torah tape. By the way, first of all, it'll help you fall asleep. But more importantly, if not, you'll study. You'll have a great shiur. You'll have a good idea. You'll learn a little bit more about the Chagim. You'll learn more about the holidays, about the belief in God. Just on Shara B'Tochen from Chaviv HaLevavos alone, there are 6 different sets of tapes. Men and women who give the shiur. I have a daughter that she herself gave a shiur to other women, and there are what I guess you call it podcasts.
Sure.
I'm a little bit old, so I don't know the exact terminologies. My children laugh at me when I use sometimes the wrong terminology. But my own daughter has a podcast, and so many people have listened later on to say, hey, I'm going to study Chayv Alavavis. I'm going to study Shar HaBitachon. I'm going to study of how I can improve my trust and belief in Hashem. And through that, I will serve Hashem in all my other ways much better.
That's really beautiful. It's really beautiful, and it's a good point to make. What ended up happening with Joel?
I will tell you that I'm not the best follow-upper.
Oh, interesting. No, but is he still in the cult?
No. The interesting thing about Joel, and I say that, most people that we had to deal with, you had to meet with them 10 times, 20 times, 30 times, 40 times. Or if you saw they weren't listening, you had to chop them off the street, lock them in a safe house, and sit for hours and hours. And I said to you before, the average ones, the case was a 4-day case. Anywhere between a 2-day case to a 2-week case. Imagine 24 hours a day, you need a whole group of people sitting and talking to somebody 24 hours a day for 14 days in a row.
What do you even talk about?
Oh, so within the deprogramming, there were 3 parts that we spoke about. Number 1, the negative about the cult. We knew enough information. We did our research. We had one guy who, remember, this is before the days of computers. You didn't have that. Mm-hmm. Today, it's way, way different. We had one guy who used to infiltrate these cults, would get their books, would get their articles, and simply knew stuff to show. In Moon, we'd show about his ties to ammunition factories. If it was the Hare Krishnas, they were able to think to some of the things that they had in some of their temples. Again, it happened to be with guns and other things like that. So you knew of the negative stuff. You say Scientology, there's enough stem about L. Ron Hubbard that's out there enough. Today, there's so many videos today, actually, YouTubes, of people who defected from the group, who basically say of the abuse that used to go on in that group. You see, by the way, as a side thing, I'm very, very confident that these small little cults, it's just a question of when they're going to be exposed. Because at the end of the day, they cannot fulfill the person's complete desire, quest, need for Torah, and need for spirituality. So they're going to implode one way or another, or maybe explode, but one way or another, it's going to come to an end. So, as I mentioned, in each cult, it was a different style. We dealt with this. Your question was, what do we do in the talking? So first of all, one thing is the negative about the actual cult and cult leader. So if we're talking about a Jewish cult, we talk about against that leader, his lifestyle. Do you know about his businesses? Do you know about he's being sued in court? Do you know about his lifestyle with his family, etc.? And likewise, in all the cults, the cult leaders always had negative parts to their life. And their teachings, we would attack some of their teachings. They lived on this mantra with these ideas. We would attack those ideas and show that those ideas are not true for life, meaning they're not Torah ideas. Second thing is, we talk about the positive Torah and Yiddishkeit. Most of these kids who were in cults had no Jewish background. So we would start from the story of Avram Avinu, that he was 3 years old and he came out of the cave and he was able to recognize God on his own. The reason why Echad Hoya Avram, why was Avram Avinu so special? Because other people were taught about God and then they learned about God. Avram Avinu came to God totally on his own. No one mentioned the idea of God. He walked out, he says, hey, they're telling me to serve the sun, but you know what? Where's the sun at night? They're telling me to serve the moon. Where's this moon during the day, etc. He came to the conclusion that there must be a God on his own. That's why Avram is so special. So we talk about the positive parts of Judaism. And then what we call the babysitting service. Some of it was just basically time that we sat with the person just to spend the time that he should enjoy the people that were there. If it was playing a game, maybe a game of chess, or getting them to think. Because many of the cults, what's basically said, you don't do the thinking. The master, the guru, the teacher, he does the teaching, the thinking for you. You don't ask any questions. If you ask questions, we squash those questions. There's something wrong with you that you have a question, that you have a doubt. And therefore, all we want to do is games that would help bring out their thinking patterns and their ideas.
We'll be right back to this week's episode, but first we have special news from Eretz Yisrael from Rav Shmuel. Rav Shmuel, how you doing, and what's the message that you have for us today?
Baruch Hashem. First of all, hi everybody, Yaakov and all your listeners, and I'm here to announce that we are in the 6th year of the Dream Raffle, where we are raffling off a beautiful, luxurious apartment in the center of Yerushalayim. And you can see Hare Krishna from there. It's an incredible prize. And you can win it by simply buying a raffle ticket at thedreamraffle.com. And for this month, the month of October, for everybody who buys, you're in an additional bonus raffle with a $10,000 prize. So you can win a $10,000 prize. You can win an amazing apartment in Yerushalayim, and put in code LL, Living L'chaim, very important, LL, and save $10 off the purchase of your raffle ticket. What is better than that?
Well, you know what I love about this raffle? By the way, every single year I enter. I haven't won yet, but I happen to think maybe this year it's either going to be me or one of my listeners. But what I love about it is you have the opportunity to win this apartment, but more than that, the money that people are donating, where is that going towards, Rav Shmuel?
We're the only organization, Yaakov, that supports all the different segments of the population in Israel. We support kollels, a few Haredi kollels. We support the settlers. We're planting trees across the country. We're the #1 financial arm of the search and rescue unit. We're a unit that's saving lives literally every day of the year, searching for missing Jews. We're helping feed poor families and poor people in the Jewish city of Ramla. We are helping teens at risk in the Jordan Valley. We're involved in every facet of life for the religious, the irreligious, Sephardic, Ashkenazi, Haredim. And the funds from the Dream Raffle go to support these projects. So thedreamraffle.com, LL code, saves you $10, and you can win $10,000 cash. And like you said, by the way, you did win. By supporting the Dream Raffle, you are a winner.
Love that.
And by the way, I really believe that, because this is our only fundraiser of the year, and it supports these amazing projects across Israel.
You should know, I watch you like at least the past few years, you've aired the drawing live. I promise, right. I get so nervous because I'm like, okay, my name's actually coming up. So it didn't actually come up, but like you're saying, I did feel like a winner because I really felt proud to support so many incredible initiatives that's taking place. And you know what? As a Jew who's not living in Eretz Yisrael yet, at least I can help those yet in Eretz Yisrael and hopefully get my ticket to a beautiful, gorgeous apartment.
We're waiting for you. We are waiting for you, Yaakov. Nothing will make me happier than to pull out. And the winner is Yaakov Langer.
I really have a good, strong feeling that it'll be one of the Inspiration for the Nation listeners. So again, go to the website and don't forget the code LL so we know how many of you are going ahead that are listening to this and actually helping our sponsors. Rav Shmuel, any last words?
And saving $10.
And saving $10. Thanks so much, Rav Shmuel. And
Am Yisrael Chai.
Am Yisrael Chai. Now back to this week's episode. Was there ever a time where you were unsuccessful with the process? And also, were you ever scared that these cults would come after you personally?
Two heavy questions. Success is a very interesting question. Often I'm asked by members of my family, you go out to work, so did you have a successful day? I guess all of us, you come home to your wife, to your husband, did you have a successful day? And I say, well, how do you determine success? Mm-hmm. Because some of the people, and I'll give you the Divine Church of Bible Understanding, we had a young lady that we believe successfully deprogrammed. She was so enraged that the cult lied to her. She went back into the cult to ask questions. And this was one of the points that actually dispersed. It really broke up the entire cult. So if a young lady goes back to the cult because to get certain answers, is that called a success or is that called a failure?
Well, I think, where is she now? Is she part of that cult still, or?
Well, the cult was disbanded,
Right,
so
right,
obviously
okay.
it's not part of the cult.
A mission accomplished.
Right. So the real question is, where that you're like, I guess you're right. Where's that person afterwards? So some people, it wasn't the success I was looking for. I think a better question would be as follows: how many of the cult kids that we dealt with actually ended up embracing Torah and Yiddishkeit and becoming religious Jews? And that answer is about 50%. Made a commitment to Shabbos within the first 3 months after they left the cult.
Wow.
Made a commitment to Shabbos and lived a firmer lifestyle. Some more religious, some less religious. Like often when I speak to, as I said to you before, to yeshiva kids, and they'll ask me, do you know that? I said, children, maybe one of your parents were that person in the cult that I dealt with, just to get them a little bit thinking. And sometimes, you know what? They'll come over and say to me, you helped my cousin. I think you helped my aunt. You helped my uncle. So, yeah, many of these people are today a part of what we call a really Amcha, part of Klal Yisrael in a good way. And then there are a lot of people who went back, but they left the cult, did not embrace Torah and Yiddishkeit, or they started being a little bit more Jewish. Maybe they kept the 3 high holidays. Maybe they identified more as Jewish people, more proud of Jewish people. One of the movies we would show them when we say about was Let My People Go. Where is
Charlton Heston?
No. 1 second. It was a movie about the history of the Jewish people, and you'd see that today that we're thriving. Unfortunately, one of the problems we deal with today with young people is self-esteem. We know that that's across the board. I found that, and I'm going to say all, but never say all because it's not always all the young men and women that we spoke to had suffered from self-esteem, and that's how they were able to get involved in the cult. All it is, suffering a little bit of self-esteem, particularly a self-esteem within Torah and Yiddishkeit. So they weren't proud to be Jewish. I have a friend of mine who was from a different circle of Hasidim. And somebody asked him one day, why'd you become a Chabadnik? He said, I'll tell you why I became Chabadnik. Because before I became Chabad, when I would travel for business, I would hide my Judaism. I would hide my long payas. I would hide my yarmulke. I would hide my tzitzis. And when I came to Chabad, I learned, hey, you know what? I'm a Jew and I'm proud. I'm going to wear my tzitzis. I'm going to wear my long payas. And that is a very, very big shift. So one of the things, what we basically worked with is to show that your self-esteem was low. That's why you got involved in the cult. Give yourself good self-esteem and Jewish self-esteem, and that's the best thing that's going to do for you. Now, if they embrace Torah and Yiddishkeit later as a lifestyle, again, you have to remember, my bulk of this work was from 1975 to 1985. I know, again, there was no real way of tracking these people. Right. I wouldn't know where these people are.
And what about, were you ever worried that these cult leaders or just the cult followers are going to come after you? Like, yeah, just find the guy with the red yarmulke. We're going to get him.
Yeah. Well, that was a little bit of I will tell you like this. Over the years, we dealt with a variety of different cults. The one that got closest to home, that got the FBI involved, was actually a Jewish cult that we were successful in exposing and dismantling and completely breaking up the cult. But at a certain point, the U.S. The U.S. Attorney's Office called me and started asking me questions. And the FBI came down to our office and wanted to speak to some people that we've been helpful to.
Which Jewish cult was this?
It was. I don't want to go into the details. Although it was many, many years ago, when I mention it to me, even to my own children, they say they don't even know what I'm talking about.
Well, I guess you're getting FBI involved.
The reason why I don't want to mention it is, as it happens right now, I am dealing with a potential Jewish cult. And the jury, as I tell people, the jury isn't out yet. We don't know if it, I don't know if I would use the word cult or not cult, but there's something very, very wrong in some of the dealings of this rabbi to his students and some of the behavior of the students themselves.
Without naming names for this particular thing you're looking into now, what parts of this organization, school, place, whatever it is giving you that cult red alarms?
The red flags are, number one is alienation. A boy joins the yeshiva. The first thing he's told is to alienate from himself and his parents. Now, of course, the rabbi says we don't alienate anyone from their parents. They became more religious and automatically they're moving away from their parents. That is ridiculous. So many people have dealings with non-religious people. Hey, my neighbors, are they all religious? My business partners, are they all religious? My business associates, are they all religious? My customers, are they all religious? No. Oh, we can get along with non-religious people on every front. But because he's your father or because she is your mother, now all of a sudden you have to disown him and disassociate yourself? So alienation is one problem. The next problem is some of the behaviors within the cult. When you have people call in the cult and say, listen, we have certain classes with our Rebbe that we have to swear that we're not going to tell what happened in this class. That is perfect for a cult. We say, listen, what happens in this room, only us know. You know, the joke, I say, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Oh, what happens in this room, what happens in this ashram, what happens in this Beis Medrash is only for us. Do not talk to anybody, no matter what the situation is. So it may be a shir, it may be a shmooze, it may be other activities that take place. The cult that we're exploring right now, the question is about their drinking habits. They're given liquor to drink, and more than one student to the 10, more than 1 million students, I should say, came forward and say, after we're given to drink, they start asking questions about our private life. Very similar to what Scientology does. Scientology gets you to a certain point where you have to share your hidden secrets. And then you have to sign a contract with Scientology for 1 billion years, that you're going to be a follower for 1 billion years. And some of these students said, we had to sign a paper that we're all in. That's an all-in paper. And therefore, that means our parents are not not important. Our old Rosh Hashiva is not important. Our Rebbe, our rabbis, our family rabbi is no longer important. Uncles, aunts. The only one who's important is this group. The only one who's important is this guru. The only one important is this rabbi. I have a problem with these behaviors. Most people will say, hey, it's not bothering you. Your kid's not there. Look the other way. No. My father, of blessed memory, Rabbi J. Hecht, there's a nice book written about him as well. He was on radio for many years. He was an activist and unfortunately died very young at the age of 66, but was an ambassador for the Rebbe all over the world, really traveled all over the world. For some reason or other, he never went to Russia, but many other different countries my father went to as an ambassador for the Rebbe and for Chabad. He said to me, listen, I guess what in the popular thing is, see something, say something. I was not taught to be a rabbi. I was taught to be an activist. I tell people also, there's something going on and you're questioning about a predator in your community, don't go to the rabbi. The rabbi is going to start taking halachic and he's going to start, by the way, that's what rabbis do. Go to an activist and say, listen, we're going to stop this. This guy's not coming to our shul, but he has to daven with the minyan. Maybe he has to daven with the minyan. But right now, he is under watch and he cannot come into our shul. Or we have to know what the situation is. Sometimes you have to take action first and logic second, because that's the way things get done. Mm-hmm. And that is the logic of an activist versus the logic of a rabbi. A bezdin sits down and says, okay, was is bezdin mechayev? Meaning to say, what does Torah force us to do? How does obligate us to do? I say, wait a second. I'm an activist. If it was my son, what would I do? The first thing I would do is punch you in the face and tell you to go somewhere. First thing I do is get away from my family, and then I'll find out, oh, he is guilty, he's not guilty. You know what? I'll come back to you, Yaakov, later and say, I'm sorry we threw you out of the shul. How could I make it up to you? Either you will forgive me or you won't forgive me. But my son or daughter, am I not going to protect? And for that matter, I want to protect your son and daughter, and this one, and Moshe's son and daughter, and Chani's son and daughter, and everybody's son and daughter, because that is my job as an activist. That is my job as an asken within the Jewish community. Yes, there are times, my dear friends, when you have to act first and think second. And in essence, that's how we got into doing deprogramming. We would talk to these kids, we saw it went nowhere. And we realized, hey, we better do something a little bit more drastic. Let's grab the kid off the street, kidnap the kid off the street, lock him in a safe house, and then see what happens. One of the questions that I'm always asked, because I'm trained in the area of dealing with drug addicts and addiction in general, will it work for an addict? And there are those who have used this formula to fight addiction. Addiction is a very, very difficult thing. And unfortunately, within the Orthodox Jewish community, and I write about it in my book of Whatever It Takes, because there were cases that we really had some really, really extreme things that we had to do. Addiction within our community is a real, real illness. And again, speak up, do some things. And you can't first say we're going to have the halachic reason and fine at this, and then when you bring me 2 witnesses, and then we'll tell the guy to stop coming to shul because we think he's pushing something on our children. No, stop coming to shul. There are times you're guilty before you're proven innocent. And if you're innocent, so go prove yourself innocent. So that's part of my philosophy.
I think the point before that you made, I think it was a perfect explanation of Derech Eretz Kadlam Torah. Like, there's a place for Torah, of course.
Oh, I love it.
And there's Derech Eretz before. There's just making sure there's someone's healthy and going with what's normal. And you
Yaakov, I love it. I want to quote you on this one. That's right. Okay, that's the Lashon. Derech Eretz Kadlam Torah. Don't tell me what Torah says. The first is a Derech Eretz. This guy's a danger. Get him out of shul.
I want to ask you a question, and I don't know if you'll have an answer, but it's coming to my head because, like, one time someone mentioned it to me, and I personally don't know enough about cults to be able to argue it. But this person was saying, "Oh, I know what cults are. Judaism's a cult." How would I or anyone answer and be like, "What do you say?" Like, okay, obviously I know the answer is no, but how do we answer that question?
So first of all, the word cult I really don't like, because it has many, many meanings. I understand we can open up the dictionary and we can have one meaning. But when I lecture about cults, I always start off by saying, listen, tonight I'm going to give you my definition of a cult. Well, what I refer to it as the working definition of what the cult is. And I talk about the cult leader. I talk about a cult basically strips you of your individuality and the fact that they don't want you to make decisions. The cult makes the decisions for you. And the fact that the cult leader is above the letter of the law. Those are the generally basic 3 things. So if you're talking about a lifestyle, and that's what you're calling a cult, okay, so you know what? Everything is a cult. If you're saying, my first question to the person, when you say that Judaism is a cult, you have to define it. What does that mean? Generally speaking, I'd say is when you throw your seichel out the window, when you no longer follow your seichel, or like Scientology, when you throw your emotions out the window, I'm saying the first thing is you're a cult. You're a member of a cult. You're following a cult. So Torah, on the contrary, Torah says use your seichel, use your brains, use your intellect, use your heart, use your emotion. Work on them. You have the feelings. Yes, you should follow those feelings. You have a passion. Follow that passion. So as far as I'm concerned, the cult and Judaism, just the opposite. Just the opposite. And we see the end results. Where does it bring you? When I was heavily involved in this, they said the difference between Judaism and every other religion in the world. There's a few differences, by the way. The one difference is Judaism, different than every other religion in the world. Every other religion in the world started basically by one person or a small group of people. Judaism started 600,000. 2.5 million people were at Sinai. We were all there. I'm not coming to say prophecy. God told me. No, told us. And how do I know that? Because my father told me that his father told him, that his father told him, and my mother likewise told me. So Judaism was the only religion in the world where God revealed himself to the entire Jewish nation. Something like the inspiration of the nation. To the entire Jewish nation. That's number one. But here's where a very, very important thing. Judaism brings unity. Other religions and cults bring divisiveness. And that would be first thing is, okay, you're saying this is a cult. Okay, let's use this barometer. Let's use this measuring stick. This group, does it bring people together or does it bring divisiveness? Because most cults say, oh, these guys are bad and that guy, this Rosh Hashiva is not holy, this rabbi we don't have to follow, this hechsher we're not going to eat from, etc., etc. Now, are there certain aspects of cult? Oh, you say, well, if cult members wake up in the morning and go to sleep, I do that too, by the way. I wake up in the morning and I go to sleep at night. So I also, there was a Jewish cult that unfortunately was very, very successful in getting many, many people from Crown Heights. This goes back about 7 years ago. This
is in your second book, right?
In my second book, Whatever It Takes. And maybe we can give a little plug now for the
Sure.
the
Yeah,
book.
please.
Show the cover.
Yeah.
And,
anyone watching on YouTube.
Yeah. Whatever It Takes is, I write about a lot of different topics that usually rabbis are afraid to talk about. And unfortunately, because of that, and what I write about it is because people have said, oh, rabbis don't get involved with agunas. Lie. Rabbis do get involved in agunas. We're sometimes afraid to say what we do with agunas because not everything is necessarily legal. In fact, I'll tell you about a story that I grabbed the guy off the street. We locked him up until he gave the get. Yes, we needed a psak din of koifenoisei, but we did something brave and bolden in order to get that woman her get. And likewise, we did a lot of things in between. There was a lot of women that the people that I work with and associated with. Again, when I use the word I, if you read my book and you think everything that time I say the word I mean Shea Hecht, no, I couldn't live that. I didn't live that long. When I say I mean members of my team. When I finished my first book in the deprogrammers, we had basically a team of a few people. In fact, in my second book, I write about some of the people in the first book because they both passed on, and that was Larry Michelle and Sue Michelle. Sue Michelle full-time worked for me for those 10 years. If I had a case, when I wrote my book, she didn't want any part of it. She said, listen, I got my own problems. So I take credit for some of the work that she did. Larry Michelle really had Mesiras Nefesh. He was the first one who gave us the safe house.
Wow.
Where we can do our things. So I write about it in the second book. So in my second book, I write of many, many things that we did. So there was a Jewish cult that officially sold certain parts of Yiddishkeit, and they got a lot of people from Crown Heights to go to their seminars. I call it life choice seminars in my book. It was actually called The Call of the Shofar. And a lot of people went to that thing. And when I started talking out, I got a lot of flack. The biggest and the best were calling me up and say, Shea, this time we think you went too far. So COL Live, which was like the local, number one blog within Crown Heights, they interviewed me. And I said, listen, guys, let's understand, just because you use the word cult, that doesn't make the word bad. You can have a kosher cult. You can have a good cult. Because aspects where I say the cult is where you give up your individuality. Hey, a kibbutz can be called a cult. I don't have my individual bank account. We work for the call. There's a certain unity amongst the people. Of course, the problem is, when you start dealing with some of the other things, or when you use people for your own benefit, or certain people are getting rich on other people, that's when you have problems of a cult. So just the word of cult alone is not a bad word. Of course, we use it that way because we usually say if someone is running a cult or someone is involved in a cult, there are some of the other ills of society and some of the own other things that there's people are taking advantage of, and things are taking place that everyone would say is wrong. Lines are crossed that are 100% wrong. If those lines are b'machshava, in thought, in speech, or in action, it's all the same. So much in the Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya, Rabbi Shneimur Zalman writes in Tanya, that sometimes hirur haravera can be worse than avera itself. Sometimes thoughts and thinking and planning into, I'm not doing anything. No. The thoughts sometimes can be even worse, and harsher punishments could be given for thoughts and developing a mind more than the action itself.
So what happened with the Kol of Shofar?
Kol of Shofar, thank God we pointed out how these techniques were just really to get you from point A to point B, so you would then sort of join this group. We showed that they were charging, in that case, they were making money. They were charging, and this goes back a few years ago, so they were charging, I think, $650 for a weekend of 2 days. And they realized that many of the things was hype. They were giving you a quick hype. You felt good for that weekend, but when you went back, because they said they're going to help you deal with your issues and problems, when you went back, those problems they're still there. So that's another thing about when you say a cult, where we going to give you a mind alteration, but that mind alteration, we're going to bring you to a state, a high, that really doesn't stay for very long. And therefore, the resolutions that have to follow that high don't really substantiate and don't become concrete. You don't really change your lifestyle. There was another thing that we're in our community. Again, I write about it in the book. Don't want to get with something called mic drop. The concept was you get up, make a speech, and if you say all your negatives, you expose yourself negatives, you have nowhere to go. And therefore, you only have the way to go up. And they explained and taught people that, hey, this is going to work. And I said, it doesn't work. Study after study, because things like Landmark and other places like that, studies show, and I'm talking about Channel 4 television, Channel 2 television, they did studies on these things and they go nowhere. They give you a hype that carries you for a day or two, sometimes for a week or two, but does not change your problems. You still go back to, you still have to pay your electric bill and your telephone bill.
Okay, we will be back to maybe the most important moment in this entire episode. But first, I need to talk to you about my journey. Well, I get a lot of books thrown at me these days. I'm not the biggest reader, but I know that reading is so important, and I read on Shabbos. Shout out to David Beshefkin. And I try to read when I fall asleep. Kind of awkward if you're watching this as you're trying to fall asleep, because I don't know, watching things as you fall asleep isn't the best, but reading is a lot better. Well, my life has been transformed because I've been getting so many books, and I've been turning down books for ads, because if I read a book and I'm like, this isn't it, why would I suggest that to you? I'm only suggesting to you the books that I believe in. So I got to turn down a bunch. Sorry, but this is a relationship, me and you. So I like to share the books that I like, and I'm so proud to tell you about them. And there's two separate books. First off, let me tell you about Dimensions in Chumash by Rabbi Emanuel Bernstein. I was actually reading his book on Sukkot, and I have his book on all Yom Tovim. It is so fascinating. You have to read it slowly because it's like a mixture between a book and a sefer. It's so insightful. It's so well done. And let me tell you why it's amazing. I have my show notes over here. In these volumes, best-selling author and master teacher Rabbi Emanuel Bernstein takes the reader on a journey through Chumash. Each chapter begins with questions on a particular topic or episode, some disarmingly simple and others somewhat more nuanced. With our curiosity piqued, Rabbi Bernstein proceeds to draw upon a vast array of commentators from throughout the generations, guiding us toward a new level of understanding, one that is eye-opening, exhilarating, and profoundly satisfying. This work will bring the reader's understanding and appreciation of the Chumash and its commentaries to entirely new heights. You can get it on mosaicapress.com, Dimensions in Chumash. You could go ahead and search that. And if you use the code L'chaim, you're going to get 18% off your order. These books are really well priced. There's 2 volumes in here, and I have started reading it. I didn't finish it yet. I'm going through it, but parsha by parsha, breaking it down, and it's really insightful, and you start to see the parsha in a different way that maybe when you're in 3rd grade, you had an understanding, but this brings it up to I'm 31. I think it's even a higher level than me at 31, but it's really incredible. And I cannot implore you enough to go out and buy this. No matter what, it could be you're not during Bereshis watching this and you're like, maybe you should buy it. Yeah, well, it goes through the entire parshas, so you could pick up any point. Now, go ahead and use the code l'chaim@mosaicpress.com. Now, let me tell you about another book that you've heard me talking about. It's called The Daily Aliyah. It's actually all proceeds go to daily giving. So if you like supporting incredible organizations every day, you could buy this book and then boom, you're helping funnel the success of so many wonderful organizations. Well, Daily Aliyah is something that I was actually made fun of by people. They're like, hey, Chabad has this, okay? There's Sicha, or I don't know if I'm saying it properly, but I'll tell you why this is a little different. Daily Aliyah basically goes through every single parsha and breaks it down. Rishon, Sheni, Shlishi, Revi, you get the whole thing. And each day of the week, you could go and say, Bereshis, Sunday, Rishon, Monday, Sheni, Shlishi, Tuesday, etc., and go through the entire Torah. But I'll tell you why I think it's a little different. It's very motivational. Yes, the rabbis bring lessons from the parsha, but I think what speaks to me so much is it's motivational. He's bringing the insights from the parsha that you may have missed out on. And also, let's be honest. How many of us start doing Shnai Mikra and finish? Okay, amazing if you do. I hope you're one of them. But how many of us go through the parsha and you hear Dvar Torah about like Parshas Noach? You're going to be hearing about the Mabel. How many people are actually talking about the Tower of Babel? You know, it's something that comes up maybe throughout the year, but doesn't come up when you're talking about Parshas Noach. Well, now you're going to have the opportunity to get a 360 experience at the entire Parsha. So you could go ahead and get your book on also mosaicpress.com, or you could also get the book, Rabbi Ressler told me, on dailyaliyah.org. You can find the link in the show notes. Incredible. Go ahead and help support those that need the support from daily giving. And now, back to my conversation with the Jewish Cultbuster. So I have a few more questions. We're running out of time, so I want to get to it. I have to mention it. I don't know if I know you were involved somewhat with trying to stop it, because I did an episode with Mendy Levy, who escaped the Lev Tar cult, which unfortunately is still going on today. What would you have to say about like an entity like them?
Al chatoy ani masker hayom. When I think about Lev Tar, it pains me deeply, because they came to me 20 years ago.
Wow.
And then too, when I spoke up, there were a lot of leaders within our community, leaders who I respect, who said, Shia, I'm telling you, the guy's a tzaddik. I'm telling you, the guy's a good guy. The guy's a tzaddik. You know what he was doing to little boys? The guy is a Yimach Shemoy on Shlomo Hellbrand. You were allowed to say Yimach Shemoy on this man. Okay? And the stories, of course, I don't have to tell Mendy Levy. Mendy Levy is what we, in the Hasidic world, we call a geschmacka kid. He's an inspiration for the nation. That's why I am on. Okay. You love him when you meet him. And by the way, there was another fellow who made also a 2-hour video, talk from a guy from Israel, also a geschmacka guy. You want to love this guy. You want to embrace him when he tells a story. I think there's a lot to learn from that. What happens is the man comes as a rabbi and he gets endorsements from other Rosh Yeshivas or other Rebbes. So you immediately say, oh, he must be holy. He must be good. And then we forget to scrutinize, to question when we think things are wrong. The red flags are quickly pushed aside and said, oh, we don't have to worry about the red flags. We have this endorsement. The Rosh Yeshiva wasn't there when the red flag came up. The Rosh Yeshiva doesn't know about the red flag. Therefore, so the first thing is, yes, it's a cult. Yes, it's a deadly cult. Deadly cult. They killed people there. Mendy's father, unfortunately, was killed in that cult, clearly. Hellbrand's daughter, her own daughter, was killed by that cult. And other stories that we still don't know about, and they're still going to come out. So, what can we do? First of all, first thing is, don't give them money. That's the first thing. Second of all is, if you know someone from the cult, try to see if you can be helpful. They have to be exposed. And I tell you something, the big thing what happens in our circles, it's Chil Hashem. Don't say anything. Chil Hashem? Why don't you look at it on the opposite side? These guys are doing something wrong, and I'm going to be outspoken. That's a Kiddush Hashem. This guy does something wrong. The Rambam says that if you have evidence against somebody If you have damning evidence, meaning to say you have evidence that basically will bring this person to be chayav, and you don't say it, the Rambam has a big problem with that. You're not allowed to hold back information. So people who say to me, Shia, you're exposing this one, that one. What about the Chil Hashem? He's a rabbi. He's a rabbi? Maybe it's a Kiddush Hashem that we call out a rabbi if he crosses a line. So for Shea Hecht, when you get a call from a man or from a woman and say, I belong to this particular group, I think it's a cult, or I thank God ran away from this rabbi, please help me and get my friend out and my friend away. What should I do? Just hang up and tell the person, I'm sorry, I can't help you. Call 911. So you get active, and in Jewish communities, when you take a stance, they're usually going to criticize you. And I must say that before I proposed to my wife, I told my wife, listen, I plan on going through life and having enemies because I plan on accomplishing a lot. If you don't do anything, no one has anything bad to say about you. Those of us who are out there every single day hitting the pavement, helping people, saving people, really doing beyond the letter of the law, going to places maybe you shouldn't be going, looking in places that maybe we shouldn't be looking, only with one purpose, to save one Jew. I want to end with this really fascinating thing. During COVID, everybody knows that the Lubavitcher Shluchim have an international conference once a year in the month of Kislev. But in the month of Shvat, they have it for the women. And during COVID, the women did not have it. Because of COVID, they did not make one. Actually, the people did not come. Instead, they did it online. Mm-hmm. My wife, who is of course a teacher, and she runs a program for college students in the summer called the Ivy League Torah Study Program, she was on the computer listening and participating in the conference. I happened to just walk in. I'm standing behind her and watching, and a young shlucha told the following story. He says, our Rebbe was so great. He never spoke about, you got to go out there and change the whole world. He said, you go out and there and save and help one person. One person. If you can help one person, and my dear friends, if you're listening to my voice, if you're listening to Inspiration of the Nation, if you're out to help one person, maybe it's your next door neighbor, maybe it's your own son or daughter. If you can help one person, that's the way we change the entire world. Now, if we all did that for one person, Mashiach would be here. So I say we got to focus on the small little goals of one child, one person, one marriage, one family, one synagogue, one shul, one yeshiva. If we do it and help them out one way, we'll be successful. And if we all do our share, Mashiach will be here.
Really, really beautiful. Shea, I definitely need to have you on for a part 2, because I know we only spoke about like maybe 3% of what you're involved in. For anyone who wants to buy Confessions of a Jewish Cultbuster or your latest book, whatever it takes, we'll have links in the show notes, but where could they go and buy them?
Amazon is one place to go. Okay. Some of the Jewish bookstores, some of the, let's be real over here, some bookstores decided not to take my book. With good reason. I don't have any. I was speaking. Feldheim helped us distribute the book, and he said, we have to put a disclaimer on it. Yeah, it
says sensitive material, mature audience. Yeah. Which I told you this before. I think again there is mature material in here, but it's chaval because I think a lot of people that would have picked it up were like, a little too scared off from it. It's an excellent book.
Not only is it an excellent book, but those areas I really talk about things that many Rabbanim don't want to touch. Mm-hmm. And with good reason. I respect them. It's guys, like I said, activists like myself, who have to step forward. These are things that take place. There are women out there who need to get a get. There are children that need protection. There are predators that are davening in your shul, and they shouldn't. And they shouldn't be in your shul. Or if they should be with a red spot on the back, so people should know to watch them. They have no right to talk to the children. They have no right to be out in the hallway and playing with some of these kids. We have to stand up and really protect our children in the strongest way. But anyways, Amazon, you can get it. or you can call our office 718-735-0200 or 0223. That's 718-735-0223. And you can get both books. By the way, if you buy it through us, you can actually probably get a tax deduction for the book as well.
Incredible.
We'll
leave that information in the links below.
One thing I tell people.
Yeah,
I tell people, you may agree with the things that I write, particularly my second book. You may not agree. It's going to be entertaining. There are over 100 stories that I touch upon in my second book. And it's stories about bitachon, stories about belief, stories about families. You know, a lot of times people walk into my office and they'll say, we went to so many people, or we tried so many different angles, and no one was able to help us. No one was able to give us a little glimmer of hope. I say, you know what? We're going to be successful. Let's we'll break it down to little parts. We'll take one step at a time. And that's one of the reasons why I wrote my book. There is hope. There is success. We got to do the work. And no one should ever turn their back on their own children, to give up on their own children. By the way, I disagree with some of the philosophies that are out there. I believe we still have to be gevuradik certain times. We also need to be chesedic at certain times. I've told parents, you have to disown your child. And at the same time, I said, but who's going to be the savior to that child? Okay, is it Uncle Moshe? Is it Uncle Shlomi? Is it Tante Chani? Is it Tante Bela? Which one is going to actually reach out? So from your hand, you need to take a strong, a gevuradik stand for your child. After all, you may have another 9 children at home. You may have another 5 children at home. You may have grandchildren. You may have to take a stance, which is very, very important to get the message across to your child or grandchild. But at the same time, if you're not there, as I write at the end of my book of Jewish Cultbusters, a man came to the Baal Shem Tov and said to the Baal Shem Tov, actually a woman came to the Baal Shem Tov, my son embraced Christianity. And what does the Baal Shem Tov say? Love him more. Love him more. Do more. Your kid is suffering from addiction. Love him more. Love her more. Do more. Now, you may have to take the posture that you can't come to my house. You may have to take the posture is, I'm not going to go into your house. You may have to take the posture, I don't want to talk to you. But love them more and do more for them. That's the first thing I ask for the parents when they come to me. What have you done? What are you doing? Who else is on this team? Who else is fighting? If you have to take a certain stance, that's great. But what about your brothers or sisters or cousins or friends, or simply family friends, which sometimes are the best savior? I know I've did it, when it's close to home, when it's in my community, with a tremendous amount of success, as well as you go beyond our community.
Rabbi Hecht, thank you so much for coming here and doing this.
Thank you. And I must say, I was looking forward to this interview for a long time.
Yeah,
because I heard a lot of good things.
Thank you.
I'm happy you read my books and enjoyed it. I really, really hope, and I'm sure, I know the numbers bear out, that we're going to inspire a lot of people to do a lot of good things.
Amir Hashem, yes. Everyone watching or listening, if you enjoyed this, you just got a taste of it. I kid you not, pick up both of the books. They're very thrilling. I hate to say it. They're both thrilling, and it's a good wake-up call, and you see the actual behind the scenes and the massive impact Rabbi Hecht is making. So thank you.
And hope to know that there is hope, and we're restoring hope, because there are things, never give up. We can be successful.
Thank you so much for watching or listening to this week's episode. If you got this so far in the interview, go ahead and leave down in your comments, the YouTube comments, cults are crazy, or leave some of your feedback, some of the research that you've done on cults, because come on, who hasn't done some form of research on cults? It's definitely super sad, but also at the same time, very intriguing and really bizarre. So it definitely has that intrigue there. If you didn't yet read Rabbi Shea Hecht's book, go ahead and pick up Confessions of a Jewish Cultbuster. It came out years ago. And also his latest book, Whatever It Takes, which we didn't even get into, where he talks about some crises and other things that he's dealt with. Yeah, cults are not the only thing that he deals with. And you could find the links on below. If you didn't yet, go and use our code LL when you buy your tickets on thedreamraffle.com to win your apartment in Israel. Imagine, it could be you. I have a feeling in my bones it's gonna be someone from here. If you didn't yet, go and get Dimensions in Chumash. Go and use the code L'chaim when you go to the website, mosaicpress.com, which you could, again, in the show links, and you can also go and purchase dailyaliyah.org. Go and buy it so your Bereshis and Shemos and on will be transformed. Your whole Chumash, your whole cycle will be completed the right way. And last but not least, go ahead and help me look as awesome as I am, because Twillory is a sponsor, and that means that I get to rock their clothing and look my best, but not only look my best, feel my best, and with the code word INSPIRE on Twillory.com, when you spend over $139. This episode is in memory of Shimon David ben Yaakov Shleima, as well as Miriam Sarah Bas Yaakov Moshe. And I realized as I'm saying the Twillory thing, I didn't finish my statement. Go ahead and go to Twillory and buy their clothing. It's awesome, as I said before. And if you enjoyed this episode on YouTube, you're going to be able to see the Mendy Levy episode hovering over here on the screen, or in the link in the show notes to go ahead and watch my conversation with Mendy, who escaped the brutal Jewish cult Lev Tahar. We have incredible guests coming up. Until next time, even you can be an inspiration for the nation. Sounds cheesy. L'chaim. Living L'chaim.